Welcome to the empowering world of the Ladies Who Leap podcast, where brave souls share their remarkable journeys of venturing beyond their comfort zones to craft lives filled with passion and purpose. Today's episode revolves around a wonderful book written by Thymai Dong-Sheehan. The book is called Beauties of My So-Called Asian Life, and it's a memoir containing personal stories of how vulnerability, equity, and spirituality have shaped who she is and who she wants to be in this world. Enjoy. I'm sure you really enjoy this interview. Hi, welcome to the Ladies Who Leap podcast. Today, my guest is Thymai Dong-Sheehan. She has 25 plus years of public education experience, ranging from French and Spanish secondary teacher to administrator and executive level positions. After leaving her full-time position as chief equity officer in a suburban school district to be more present for her family, Thymai published her first book, which I am absolutely in love with, I will say first off, and also founded Innovate to Educate Consulting LLC. Her book, and this is the name, The Beauties of My So-Called Asian Life, is a memoir containing personal stories of how vulnerability, equity, and spirituality have shaped who she is and who she wants to be in this world. Welcome, Thymai, to my podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm thrilled to be here. So delighted. Looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, and I'll tell you, I'm going to let people know I don't always have the opportunity to read a book before a guest is on. I am about 3/4 of the way through your book and I can't put it down. It's just time that's been constraining it. And it is so good. It's funny, it's interesting, it's enlightening. And I'm sorry, I'm going to talk a little bit about it. Those 3 sections, vulnerability, equity, and spirituality, really resonated with me. And you kept to those themes. It was just beautifully written, I just have to tell you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to start with childhood experiences and how that shaped who you are today. Well, again, after reading a good part of your book, I want to ask about 2 things in your childhood. Being the middle child and being in a family of immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
How did those 2 conditions, I'm going to call them, shape your life?
Oh my goodness, where to begin? I think it probably makes more sense to start with the immigrant experience since, that happened first. Because when we fled Saigon, Vietnam, when the communists arrived, so we actually left April 30th, 1975. That was the day the communists arrived in Saigon. The alarms went off. And my dad said, we've got to get out of here. We have to leave. And so he did not want to, but his mother said, you've got to go take the girls. And my mom was pregnant with my little sister. That's why I say the immigrant part happened first, because I wasn't a middle child yet. And so, just that experience alone, of course, I don't remember it. I was 2.5 years old. But when my dad tells that story, it just sounds like this can't be our real life. It sounds like fiction to hear that. We snuck onto these commercial boats. There was a rope ladder hanging over the side. We climbed up that to get on the boat. Communists were shooting at us before we made it into international waters and was a little bit more safe under the guidance and support from the US military. And so we were immigrants and refugees both, right? We chose to leave, but we also didn't feel like we had any choice, that we had to leave if we wanted to have a better life here in America. And so that experience of coming over here with my dad, who fortunately did already speak English, and this will probably come up later, but he actually taught English in Vietnam. He was a teacher. Maybe that influenced me to be a teacher, but he did already speak the language. And so it was really my mom who needed to learn it. And of course, me and my sisters needed to pick that up and, try to be able to acclimate, because we didn't know that there were such things as acculturation or integration of 2 cultures. All we thought is we've got to just acclimate and try to make sense of where we are and try to fit in. But that experience was phenomenal and scary because we didn't look like anybody else. So there was always a lot of, discrimination and judgment against us, and, people saying things about us, making fun of us, and things we didn't understand growing up. And then compound that by being a middle child, right? So when my little sister was born, and this is actually an interesting fact. So when we ended up in San Antonio with our sponsors through the church, who let us live with them in a motel room because they owned the motel, when we were living in that room, and my little sister was born September of 1975. So she was actually the first Vietnamese refugee baby born in San Antonio. And full confession, she's going to love that I'm making this statement publicly, because she read my book and she said, you should have fact checked with me. But anyhow, so I stole her story when I was in elementary. I pretended that I was the first Vietnamese refugee baby. I stole her story, and I just confessed not too long ago, but I'm publicly saying that actually was my little sister, Donna. But yeah, being a middle child and also already being an immigrant. So feeling like you don't belong in that space at school because you don't look like anyone else, from elementary all the way up to senior in high school. I had that sense of I just don't belong. And then at home, my little sister, and promise me, I don't have that victim mentality anymore. But, growing up, my little sister got everything because she was just the baby. My older sister got everything because she was the first to do everything. So I, at home, didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. So those two things meant Thymai looking elsewhere, right, for validation, trying to figure out where can I go that I do feel like I belong.
Yeah, and a good part of your book is that process of
Yes,
learning about where you belong. I mean,
yes.
it's just, and it's funny. You have
Thank
such a great
you.
way of writing. I want everybody to know
Oh,
because it's enjoyable. It's funny. You can't wait to go pick it up again. Okay, what is she going through now? And finding out what your next step was in your whole journey of transformation. We are ladies who leap, so we talk about leaps, but your whole life was about leaps. I mean,
Yes,
just ancestrally, just from your family leaping from coming from
yes,
Vietnam to the United States, huge leap. And
absolutely.
I'm glad to hear that your dad was also an educator because your focus was always in education. As you became an adult, you worked yourself up. I mean, you,
Yes,
you did a lot of educating, but you worked yourself up to be a chief equity officer at a company
yes.
in Central Texas. I'd love to hear about your education journey. Not only that, but when you got your own degrees, because it's very
Mm-hmm,
impressive,
mm-hmm.
and how you moved in that role into actually a new consulting business, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. So, like I said, my dad was a teacher, and I don't know if that was what drove me, but I think maybe subconsciously it did. In elementary school, I used to pretend that I was a teacher, and my sisters did not want to be my students at all because they didn't want their sister giving them homework. But I used to play teacher, and I'll also give credit to my high school French teacher. She was so fabulous. I mean, she would walk in with these amazing outfits, and she was American, but she just looked so French, and her French was beautiful. And I said, I want to be just like Mademoiselle Jones. And so I just wanted to be a French teacher ever since I met her in high school. And then when I got to my undergrad, I had amazing French professors at the University of Texas here in Austin. And so that just further cemented it for me. And when I started teaching, it just felt natural. So not that I did not have any challenges, not that there were not thoughts like the first, second, and third year that are the hardest for teachers, right? I didn't have, it wasn't an easy, smooth path. I mean, there were times where I go, I don't know if I can do this, but I hung in there because I love the kids, the relationship with the kids. I love that. And so I always thought I was going to be a teacher forever. I taught 4 years at a middle school. And then at that time, I had moved to a suburb outside of Austin. And there I started teaching high school. And at that time, I was recently divorced. And so I was going through what my, what do I call her? I don't want to say psychic. I think she called herself a natural healer. But when I was just dabbling with that for fun, she had said after a divorce, you kind of go through this warrior woman stage. And I was just doing everything team I wanted to do. I mean, I threw myself into teaching. That was it for me. I was 200% in teaching. So I wasn't just a French and Spanish teacher for my students, but I went to their plays. I went to all the performances. I did all sorts of clubs and sponsored. I mean, that was just what filled me and what fueled me at that time. And I always thought I was going to stay in the classroom. But for me, for my faith, I listen to God's voice and I get guided in different directions, so to speak. And I had an opportunity to leave the classroom and step into a district leadership role at the central office. And I said, are you kidding? I love teaching. I don't want to be an administrator. That sounds so boring. And the particular person that invited me to apply for his role because he was retiring, you'll never believe this, but that week after I saw him and he told me he wanted me to apply for his job, I ran into him 2 times around town and I never see this man. And so I'm going, this is not a coincidence. And so I ended up in that role, and that coordinator position morphed into supervisor roles and then, director roles, and actually took a leap at one point and left school district and went into a nonprofit sector even though that nonprofit was supporting school districts, education from pre-K all the way up to college, it was still educational based. And then I had opportunities, which to me were huge leaps, to lead as a director and then a chief of diversity, equity, and inclusion office, dedicated offices toward that work. And that was pretty scary, just considering the climate and the society we're at now. We're so fragmented, people hurting and suffering and all this blaming and canceling. So that was pretty challenging. And along the way, I realized, I love teaching students, but I started realizing when I was in that district level leadership position, working with teachers and other staff, I realized how much I love teaching adults. And that's what propelled me to go back and get my doctorate in adult professional and community education. And so now, and I didn't get to share this with you previously, but I actually went back to teaching middle school just part-time, because when I left that full-time role as chief equity officer, I don't know how to not work. And so I still needed to do something while I was being present for my family that was experiencing all these different health challenges. And so I taught part-time at a local community college, and I had adult learners, and that was phenomenal because I got to teach immigrants, and it felt like I was giving back, and knowing that my mom and dad went through that experience, I could see my mom and dad in that class going, this is what they must have felt when they first came over here. So I saw them in the students, and I poured into my adult learners, but it was grant funded. So I wasn't sure if that program was going to continue. So I decided to go back and teach part-time French at a local middle school. And it's been actually phenomenal because that actually is helping my business, which is an educational consulting and speaking LLC. And so being able to be back in the classroom, I think just sort of completes that full circle journey that I've had in education, starting as a teacher, going into these other positions and then coming back to a teacher. So it really does, I think, help my credibility in terms of what I feel like we need to be doing more in education, because I'm still seeing that solution is still viable and still needed.
Oh gosh, thank you. Because I was going to ask how the DEI policy changes had affected you, and it did in some way, right? With the fact that you were chief DEI officer at that company, that was taken away. It was taken away. And again, when things happen for you, if you view it as happening for you, then and you just talked about your general progression and what you're doing still was right in alignment with what your heart says and what you should be doing. So nothing is coincidence.
Right. Yeah. And just may I clarify? So the position actually was still there. They did have to rename it, but I stepped away from the position just to be there for family. And fortunately, the position was still there, and it continued for a while. But I think they did have to rename it a little bit. But for me, I mean, I hate to talk about how DEI affected me when it's really about the students, right? That it's really impacting.
Yeah, unfortunately, we'll get it back. We will get it back. I know, I'm confident of that. Yeah. You talked a little bit about your family and how they went through one by one, had some personal health crises, and that shifted your life because you really became quite a caregiver. So can you talk a little bit about that? That's a whole nother change and leap in your life, is really changing into that role while still keeping yourself productive and setting your own personal boundaries on how you did this, but also being able to help them. Yeah.
Yes. And I never saw myself in that role. I was that person who, and I think this is for most immigrants, right? Because we come here with that vision of this American dream and upward mobility and wanting to work our way up so that we can say we're successful. And I saw myself working not because I wanted to be successful, but I just wanted to make a difference. And so I felt like what I was able to do for work in education was my calling. That's where God wanted me to be. And he just guided me and put me wherever he needed me to be so that I can be of service to others. But I remember when I was working at Chief thinking, oh, I made it, right? A title, whatever. But I remember in March of 2024, I was with my mom and dad. And my mom actually is my dad's full-time caregiver, but I just wanted to help, alleviate that burden for her and help as well. But out of nowhere, my mom said, how long have you been doing this, Thymai? And I said, well, this is year 25. And she said, you've been working hard long enough. It's time for you to quit and help mom and dad. And then she joked like, what are they paying you? I'll pay you that much to come help me. And I just laughed at it. But then after that happened, a series of events, which I don't believe are coincidences, just happened where I went, you know what? I really believe God is speaking through me to me through these events. and guiding me. And so I made the decision, you know what, I'm going to step away from work and I'm going to prioritize my family. And now my husband said, your purpose has shifted from work to family. And there's nothing wrong with that. I said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, except there's a little selfish part of me that still needs my purpose. As much as I was so happy to be able to, go see my mom and dad more than I ever could when I was working and be there to help my mom and take her to all her appointments and help her bathe my dad. I love being there for them and giving back to my mom and dad for sure, without a doubt. But I was lamenting that worker identity that I had, for so long. And so my husband said, well, you're this close to retirement. You've always said you wanted to publish that book and you wanted to start that business. Why don't you do it now when you're not, confined by a 9 to 5, whatever job? And so that's what I did. So I was able to balance helping my mom and dad and being more present with them, trying to figure out how can I not have to do this, full-time traditional schedule and work on my terms by publishing the book and starting to really try to grow my business and launch it. But yeah, I just, it's amazing to think that, to me, that's the biggest leap that you can take, is when you take a leap and it's a leap of faith and you don't know what's on the other side, but you just do it anyway, because that's just what feels right. And you feel like that's what's, the voice that you're hearing that's it's guiding you to do that. And to this day, I mean, I still don't have any regrets at all. I have the luxury that a lot of folks don't have, right? Of being able to work just part-time while I'm able to do these things and be there for people. And I don't think I shared this with you, but when I left full-time work, Lisa, it was, 3 people close to me that I love the most that were facing those health challenges: my dad, my mom, my husband. And after I left, my older sister got cancer. And then since then, now that I'm in this part-time transition phase, trying to figure out what the next step is. And then we just found out our dog has cancer. And so it's just, one after another. And, these are these issues or challenges are not unique to me, right? A lot of folks have these things that they think they're on this path, and then something happens and it puts you on a different path. And so I think you just have to be open to it and just realize that, I'm gonna just have faith and go this way, that I'm being guided, and know that it's all gonna work out.
Yeah, and understanding that you can shift in your life
Mhm,
and you can still do something for yourself, because as they say, putting your mask on first is really important. So
mhm.
you're doing that from an emotional perspective, and by writing the book, by keeping, your business alive on the side, and having the time to do that while still being there for all of the people in your family that are needing you, including your husband.
I do.
That's commendable, because you could have literally lost yourself completely, and then at some point you would have had to work really hard to get yourself back, and that's not what you want to do. It's not serving yourself, and it's not
Right,
serving the people that you love,
right.
because you keeping yourself and what you love, and keeping your own values and you actually putting boundaries on yourself
Mhm.
is very important, even to be able to be a caregiver for others.
Thank you. And that's what the book was about too. It's
Mhm.
really a search for my identity. Who am I? And so it took
Yeah.
me half a lifetime to reclaim who I am, to really feel empowered and love who I am. And so I didn't want to just lose it so quickly after I just found it.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. And I'm sure nobody in your family wanted that to happen either. We'll be
No.
right back. If you feel stuck in doubt, fear, or low confidence, there's a way forward. I'm Lisa Andria, Emotional Transformation Specialist with Ladies Who Leap Coaching. I can guide you to clear the emotional patterns holding you back so you can trust yourself again, feel confident in relationships, and step into a life of clarity and purpose. Visit ladieswholeap.com and click on the Let's Connect button to start your leap journey today. Now back to the show. I love the fact that you talk about there being a difference, and what the difference is, and what you discovered between being religious and being spiritual in your book. What did you share as the conclusion of that in your storytelling in your book?
It culminated in, for me personally, there not being a difference between spirituality and being religious. For me personally, I see them as being one and the same, because when I did, separate them, the idea of being spiritual was really just around this interconnectedness, right? That there's this some higher power, we're all connected. But to me, I've learned to realize that I can't for me, I can't be spiritual without also believing in God and my God, and really accepting that Christianity and all that goes with that, there's no way I can separate the two. But I think for me, it's difficult for educators, right? Because we work in that very public space, because I'm in public education. And so when you're in that public space, I also have to value all different faiths. And so the spirituality that I try to promote when I'm working with education organizations is very much that interconnected piece, that we're all can be attuned to one another, that we can all reach one another across all those lines of difference and find ways through compassion and curiosity to really lift each other up and lift each other's spirits up. But for me personally, when I'm able to step away from that public space, there's no difference. The two are actually very combined. I can't talk about spirituality on a personal level without talking about God, because that's what fills my spirit, is his spirit.
Yeah. And I love that there's a difference when you're talking on the public realm with the teaching. I believe that belief in God and everyone's beliefs have valid, are completely valid, because it is your own beliefs.
Yeah.
And just have some kind of belief in a higher power is perfectly wonderful for everyone to have. I feel that that's very important. So I have to say, you are a great example of resilience. I won't let anyone know some of the wonderfully interesting stories about your life. I won't give it all in detail. You have to
Some
read
are
it.
making me blush just thinking about them.
So, but as you were navigating through life, managing living as an Asian American and all the cultural experiences that go along with that, being a caregiver to your family, and then through it all, being able to write this book that's so vulnerable, you really open up with a sense of honesty and a sense of humor, right? So, what can you say about the experience of writing the book? What did that do for you? How did you grow with that?
Oh my goodness. I think everybody should write a memoir. First of all, I think everybody has amazing stories that they can share, and we can all learn from one another. And so I think the first thing I'll say is it was very cathartic, very healing to write the book. Because I include a lot of stories that growing up, I think I had a lot of shame around a lot of things that I share in that book. And the part of being a Christian is that you forgive yourself, right? Because you know that God's forgiven all your sins. But for me, it's so easy to forgive everyone else. I struggle with forgiving myself. And so the book really helped me do that, because as I was putting those very personal stories on paper and going, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to put this out in the world? I kept thinking, well, Thymai, you've got to learn how to forgive yourself. And then the other part too was, how can I put this out there for folks who might be going through the same thing, to feel that it's okay to have made those mistakes and you can still love yourself, you can forgive yourself and still love yourself. So I would say this process of writing the book was very healing, very cathartic. The other thing too is that it also was very revealing, right? You learn so much about yourself when you write a book. And, and I say a lot of the idea of talking about vulnerability, equity, and spirituality, seeing how those really were the three beauties, as I call them, that just helped me figure out, who was the person I was before, who am I now, and who do I want to be? So how can I continue to leverage that vulnerability on my own terms, instead of just going, oh, I'm so vulnerable, I'm so exposed as an immigrant, nobody gets me. And how can I really turn that around and flip that script and say, you know what, I'm going to own the fact that I'm a little Asian, I'm American, I'm a combination of both those things, I'm unique, And I don't know if you've heard a lot of talk about like that hyphen that's in between those cultures. Like when we say Vietnamese-American or Asian American, one of the first videos I saw when I was in doctoral school was about this living in the hyphen, where you're sort of just caught in between two cultures, two identities, and you're not really sure what to do with that. But there's a way you can flip that to empower yourself. It's like, I'm not going to just live in the hyphen and have these things happen to me. I'm going to empower myself. I'm going to live on the hyphen, and I'm going to claim both identities and put them into this beautiful synthesis of this unique identity and say, I don't have to choose. I can be Vietnamese, I can be American, I can be this and that. And I can just, synthesize those two to be me, someone that I love, who doesn't have to choose and who doesn't have to feel torn, and create that space of belonging for myself. So that's the empowering piece I think that I wanted folks to also get from the book too, because as Brene Brown said when she does vulnerability, it's all about taking risks, right? Being able to embrace uncertainties and that emotional disclosure, which is really what this book was about, is letting it all out there so that I can go, okay, I did it. I share these stories. And if it means I can connect with anybody out there that had the same experience, to me, it was worth it.
And I'll tell you what you're talking about, even if, like myself, not being a Vietnamese American or
Mhm.
coming from another country, I really related to it because
Mhm.
allowing yourself to be vulnerable, and I commend you for just opening up like that, is power. It helps the reader, myself, and get to know you on a level where you're like, okay, she's just bearing her soul. She's letting us know everything. And I should do the same. I'm writing a book myself right now,
Yeah.
and that vulnerability is something I really struggle with. So reading your book has given me a
Oh.
strength that I didn't know I had, that it's okay. And you're
Mhm.
right. Forgiving yourself is the most difficult thing. In fact, I have a forgiveness meditation, forgiving others, that's like 7 minutes long or something. And this is done by the teacher that I was trained on for NLP. But the one that he has for forgiving yourself is like 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives you an
Yeah,
idea that forgiving yourself
exactly.
takes a little bit longer,
Right.
even in
Yep.
meditation, than
Yep.
forgiving others. And it is so true.
Yep.
So who has been, and you've talked a little bit about it, but who's been your rock, either a person or a community that provides support to you, has provided support when things get tough? Because as a caregiver, you're going to hit those times too. But
Mhm.
who's there for you, or what community do you have to support you?
I mean, to me, God's a given. So,
Yeah.
but it's definitely without a doubt my husband. I feel like, we didn't meet until later in life. I think I was 47 when I met him. And so he's 3 years older than me. So he was 50 when he met me. And, we joke around like, where were you my whole life? But God put us together at the right time, the right moment for us to come together. But really, my husband, and he actually is the one that brought me closer to God. And I write about this in the spirituality section in the book. But, I was that person who was very stubborn. I refused to go to church. Even in growing up, my dad, Catholic, had us go to church on special occasions. But I, being the nonconformist that I was, middle child, right, rebel child, I said, I'm not going to go to church just because somebody says I should go to church. If I believe in God, I have a personal relationship with him. I don't need to go into this building called church. When I met my husband, he was going to church regularly. He said, just come with me. And I said, no. And then once I started coming and going, I discovered this amazing community. And it just, I look forward to it. Of course, it's not just a Sunday thing, right? We're reading our Bible throughout the week and we're really trying to live out, all of the messages and all of the teachings. But my husband is just a rock. He is such an amazing human. He has gone through some things where he realized that he's had a pivot and a shift in his life too. And so I think just hearing his stories about how he was able to realize, that inner led transformation, he got to that point where he said, okay, I don't like the way my life's going. I'm going to do the work to change it. And so that was very inspiring to me. And so he gets it. He gets, where I've been and where I want to go, when he guides me along the way. And he's the one that actually helps me be a better person, a better version of myself, better than I was yesterday. So, neither of us is perfect. We're both works in progress, but we support each other. But I'm going to say my husband, he embodies strength and resilience and courage. And so I take a lot from him. And I know you're asking for a person, but, and I know I don't have
No,
time to
no,
share this, but
whoever.
I just wanted to show this. So this is a poem, Lisa, called Risk. And I wish I could tell you who gave it to me. I feel so horrible that I don't remember, but I've had this thing for at least 30 years. You can see the condition.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's been
yellow.
on, yeah, no
Oh,
matter
so
where
this
I've
is for
lived.
your favorite quote, mantra, or positive affirmation. Is
Oh,
that what you're
no,
going to?
no, no,
No.
that was a
Oh,
different quote for,
okay.
yeah. This was just
Sorry.
an extra thing. But I just wanted to share because it's a poem about risk. And I've had it for 30 plus years. It's been on my refrigerator, no matter where I've lived, where I've moved to, and it's always there. And when I went to go grab it, it just gives you an idea of how old it is. It tore in half. So I had to tape
Oh,
it together.
oh,
But I read this, it's about leaping, it's about taking risks, because the greatest risk is to not risk at all. And
yeah.
so I get a lot of inspiration from obviously my husband, God, people around me, my family, but also from quotes. So I love to know that you also find inspiration from quotes as well.
Yeah. I mean, I have to ask because part of the book that when I was reading was when you were younger, you didn't feel comfortable about being kind of an outcast from being from Vietnam. And then when
Right.
you would go to Vietnam, you felt like you were an
Oh,
outcast because you were not speaking the language as
yes.
well as it should be, and you were in the United States. Has that been resolved throughout your all of your journey?
I think I've made peace with it myself. I have made peace with it. Now, I actually am going to have the opportunity to go back to Vietnam this summer with my oldest stepdaughter. So it'll be an amazing experience to share that with her. So I'm going to say to be continued. We'll see how I feel when I'm there. But no, I'm joking. No, I have made peace with it myself. That it's taking those little pieces from, because we all have multiple identities. And so it's just taking the little pieces and again, just putting it together in, in an identity that makes me feel whole, and it's a synthesis of all those identities really
Right.
coming
And
together.
everything put together is what makes you that unique human being that you
Right.
are. I
Exactly.
it and it, I think reading your book, especially in a time in the United States when immigrants are just, I mean, there are people that are just saying horrible things about
Right.
people that come from other
Yep.
countries. It it just was such a breath of fresh air to help me to understand that experience and understand also, I mean, I'm just second generation, so I my relatives came from Italy, and I know that if it wasn't for the fact that there was this huge community that had come in during World War II, they would have felt the same way as any other immigrant. It was just that there was this whole community that was with them that they were able to integrate and feel a little bit better because they had so many other Italians that were coming in. But I really appreciated it. I love people from, I believe that this country is made great because of people from all different walks of life and other countries.
Yes.
That's why we're so strong, because everybody is diverse and brings, I mean, I'm a foodie, so brings food and brings ideas and brings religions from all different aspects of life and all over the world. And we should be celebrating that. It will come back. We will come back to celebrating that. I
Yep.
truly believe that to be the case. Yeah.
Me too.
So I know we've talked about a lot. I do like to end, as you were talking about, with the favorite quote, mantra, or positive affirmation. What would you like to share that really stands out for you?
Sure. My favorite, I don't think it's in the book because to me, again, it's sort of like God is just a given. It's just up there, and it's, it just describes my general approach to life. But it's a quote by Mahatma Gandhi, with whom I'm so proud to share a birthday with. But the quote is, "Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever."
Mm.
And I love that so much because obviously it's talking about not taking any moment for granted, and then also just that learning continues. I didn't write this book and go, I'm done, I'm learned, I'm good. It's a continual ongoing excavation of who I am. So
Yeah. And everyone needs to remember that. I call myself a life student, but
yeah.
everybody needs to understand, yes, you can make advances and improve your relationship with yourself, the personal growth and development side of it, but that it's always a journey. And learning more about life and how to embrace it and live every day to its fullest is something that everyone should strive for.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for asking for that. I love sharing. I had so many I could share, but that pretty
I
much
know I was
is one.
saying my favorite was the one Maya Angelou, we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. That when you put that in there, I was like, oh, that's one of my favorite quotes myself too. And that's so true. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on my podcast, for having written a wonderful book. I would highly recommend it. I will have links and all that information in the description. How can people, I know that you're kind of going through a process, and by the time this airs, you may have relaunched your own consulting business. Can you let's talk about what the name is. I'll put that also on the bottom here, and how people can get more information about that.
Sure, sure. So the business is Inner to Educate, and the website is innervate2educate.com, but it's not innovate, it's INNER. So again, it's talking about that inner-led transformation. But the goal with the business is really working with educational systems to help the folks working within those systems who are working with students learn how to look within so that we can transform the world around us. Because a lot of times what we're seeing happening is we're so quick, myself included, we're so quick to point the finger, right, at others when we really should be pointing it at ourselves to see how we can transform from the inside. Because I think that's how we really are able to transform outward, is by working on ourselves first.
I was going to say, I truly believe that there are a lot of personal growth, development, all those kinds of lessons that should be taught to children in school and not have to wait till they're an adult and they've gone through all this trauma and trying to get rid of the issues that they've accumulated over their life. But just really, so I appreciate the fact that you've got that kind of consulting company. I really love that.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on Ladies Who Leap, taking the time to talk to me. I'm so glad that we met and that I got introduced to your book and to you. And I wish you all the luck in the world with every endeavor and with everyone in your family. Really hope that everybody gets to a point of healing and a point where they're feeling no pain and just getting better, just getting better. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. The pleasure was all mine to be a guest on your show. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. And everyone, please like, subscribe, comment, follow so that I can keep doing this, because I want to keep sharing all the stories that everyone is sharing very courageously on this podcast. So thank you for that. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening or watching. Please subscribe to the Ladies Who Leap podcast to be notified of new episodes. And I would love to hear from you. Let me know what works, what doesn't, and if you have a story to tell, please reach out. Come join the Leap community at the Ladies Who Leap Club Facebook group. Remember, leaping out of your comfort zone is where the growth happens.